He is the founder, chairman, and co-owner of the Professional Fighters League. There he is, Donn Davis. How are you? Let's hug it out. Yeah, thank you so much, Donn. Wow.
I waited 6.5 years for this.
Yes, this is
I only
big.
started the company to get here.
It's amazing. It's amazing. What a day.
What a day. Great day for fans, great day for fighters, great day for MMA.
What is it like now that it's out there, the world knows what you've been working on, and we're going to talk about the timeline here, but just the day, how it's feeling, how it's coming together for you?
Well, as a founder of a company, you always go back to day one. Mm-hmm. And day one, people said, this whole season format thing ain't going to work.
I was one of those.
UFC's an 8,000-pound gorilla. Hundreds of companies have tried. So on a day like this, you just think, another chapter, right? You know, our first goal is to be number 2. That was really our first goal. Check, we did that. And now our next goal is, with new assets and new capabilities and great fighters, how can we become co-leader? So kind of as an entrepreneur, you're never, ever done. So you never really sit back and say, instead you say, what's next? And so what's next for us is, okay, number 2 checked. Now let's go try to be co-leader.
So when did this journey start, the acquisition of Bellator? How long ago did it commence?
We first called Paramount January this year.
Okay.
So it's been a
Did you call them because you knew they were on the market, or?
No.
Okay, how did it go down?
So I think they first started to divest assets at Paramount overall in the spring. So we really called them earlier than call it their corporate activity.
Okay. Spring of this year or last year?
They started spring of this year.
Gotcha.
So we really started in January of this year. And we called them for the same reason I've talked about publicly. Athletes in any sport, whether it's the NBA or the MMA, are the foundation of everything. The more quality athletes, the deeper and better the product. And PFL, great vision. PFL, great capability. PFL done great so far. But we need more and better athletes. And there's only one company that at one time could put us on equal footing with UFC. That was Bellator. We were getting more than our fair share of free agents, 4 or 5 a year.
Right.
We were never losing our top fighters, never lost one. But we weren't getting there fast enough. And so I called them to say that was the big once-in-a-company move, that overnight we could have a roster and quality on par and on stature with UFC. So how could we get that done? That was the reason for making the call.
Okay, and how were the negotiations?
Slow.
Slow, yeah. Slow. January, it's almost December, so 11 months?
A year.
Yeah. Why so slow?
To me, Shakespeare, all's well that ends well.
Yeah.
So I tried. But, you know, big companies take time.
Yeah.
Big companies have to figure out what they want to do. And then also like-kind mergers take time. You know, I've bought a lot of companies of which we're an MMA company, they're an MMA company. So I think between a big company and a like-kind company, things just take a while.
Obviously, we know that Showtime is no longer in the sports business. Did you get any sense as to why they wanted to sell Bellator?
No, and I don't want to speak too much for them, but I think, you know, big companies always have to prioritize. And this just didn't become a priority for them.
Okay.
But I think what they saw with PFL was the opportunity to be part of a leading company going forward. So this was a stock deal, not a cash deal. They're a small minority owning going forward. So instead they said, boy, we don't want to really sell low. We want to sell low and have an opportunity to make it high. And so therefore a deal was made.
Okay, so when you say they, you mean Paramount is now a
small minority owner of the PFL.
Interesting. Okay, so you didn't have to actually exchange any cash in this deal. What a deal. What percentage?
Small.
Okay. 10%?
Can't say anything.
Okay, fair enough. That's a good deal for you. Would you agree?
Great deal for us.
You're happy?
Very happy.
Initially, was there talk of money being exchanged, or was it always this type of?
It was always this type of deal.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, when did it actually become finalized? Obviously not this morning, right? We find out this morning. Well, like, when was it an actual done deal?
It just got finalized Saturday afternoon.
You're kidding? Saturday afternoon? Holy smokes. Was there ever a point where you thought it might not happen?
Sure.
When most recently?
Oh, several times.
Really?
I always got great advice from Colin Powell. He was on the board of America Online when I worked there, and he used to tell stories.
What a flex, by the way, to just drop Colin Powell's name.
But he was obviously telling him about war, something much more serious in business. But he would talk about at night when you thought you were going to die, and you'd wake up in the morning, and you were there, and you'd feel great, and you'd have a cup of coffee, and the sun would come up. Deals always get done right after they get the worst. They blow up, and then they get done.
Interesting.
So that happens once or twice. I've done hundreds of deals as a deal guy in my life, and I kind of think about it that way, as Colin Powell was talking about, those disaster times, that just before it's dark, that's when you're almost done. And that happened a couple times here.
I had heard, and I mentioned on the show, that there was some talk about not running Bellator 301 because Paramount didn't want to pay for it, and they wanted to, for lack of a better term, like dump it in your lap and it was going back and forth. Did that ever come close?
Ancient history.
Okay. But that event was...
Well, our main focus, to focus on the go forward, is we have a vision for a reimagined Bellator.
What does that mean when you say that?
Which you heard us talk about in the press release. For fans that have liked Bellator, they'll still like it. But for us, the PFL has always been meritocracy and transparency. As you know, the season format, win and go home. Win, advance, lose, and go home. There's a place for a one-off event product, much like the UFC, where a matchmaker can come in and fans really want to see Ariel and Donn fight.
Yeah.
Well, in the season, that may never happen, right? Because we don't make the fights at the PFL. The fighters make the fights. The Bellator brand in the PFL portfolio will stand for a one-off event product.
Okay.
So we'll have 8 events a year. We call it the Bellator International Champions Series. I'll come back to why is that. These are one-off event products. So think of it as the one-off event product from the PFL platform. So whether you're a Bellator fighter or a PFL fighter, you're all now PFL fighters.
Interesting.
You're all in the pool.
Okay.
Certain fighters like to take one of our own fighters, Showtime Pettis. You know what? That season product wasn't great for him. He's probably better fighting twice a year on a one-off event, just to take one of our own. Fans love him. He can get ready for that. The season's too hard at this stage of his career. That season's the toughest test in MMA. He'd probably be great on that product. So whether you're a Bellator fighter or a PFL fighter, we'll talk to managers and fighters and say, what's the best product for you and what's the best product for those fans? You'll either fight twice a year on the Bellator International Champions Series, or you're fighting the PFL League season. Your choice, one or the other. The Bellator belts will still be at
So the
risk.
champions remain?
Champions remain, and they're at risk on the Bellator International Champions Series. PFL League season's still exactly what it was. Those products will both run during the year. So we have 2 big signature products.
Okay.
We also have the PFL Challenger Series, PFL International Leagues, but 2 big signature products. Now, PFL, the company, will run Bellator. Our media operations, our ad sales force, our business capabilities, we'll rebuild a lot of that. But the product and the brand, we will revitalize. More technology, a little bit better production, and mostly international cities. Big demand internationally. You even mentioned earlier on your show.
Yeah.
UFC hasn't tapped into all that international demand. So we'll do probably 6 or maybe 7 of those 8 shows outside the U.S., where almost all the PFL League season is in the U.S.
Okay. Mostly Europe? Or even
No,
outside?
I would say all over.
Okay.
But I would say at least half of those 8, 4 of those 8 would be in Europe. But I think there's big demand in Latin America, big demand in the Far East.
Okay. Where will those events air?
We will announce that in January. Okay. One thing that Bellator, unfortunately, not their fault, they've moved around so much the last 3 years in terms of media distribution under Paramount. There wasn't a consistent home for fans. We'll get them a consistent U.S. home and consistent international homes. But it'll be premium and it'll be mostly free. Just like PFL. We've always been on ESPN in the U.S. and 20 media partners. So the majority of the product is broadcast and streamed. That's what we'll do with Bellator.
So there was once a period many moons ago where Zuffa owned WEC and UFC, and WEC was on Versus, had its own TV deal, and UFC was on Spike TV. Is it possible that Bellator has its own TV deal separate? Okay.
Yes.
Is that likely? Is that what's going to happen?
I think it's likely.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
I think it's likely.
Last time you were on, I asked you about the state of your deal because the event this Friday, at least as of right now, is the last one under the current agreement with ESPN. Do you have an update on that deal?
I'll give you the same update. The deal is done, and we'll announce it in 2 weeks after the championship.
Any particular reason why?
Championship.
Okay, sure.
Don't want to
I mean, I like
you can only have so much news in 1 week, right?
Sorry.
But big news today, obviously Bellator, big news Friday championship,
Sure.
and then we'll get to the business of 2024 and announce.
Is there a Bellator deal done?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Is it possible that the deal that you are signing with the PFL, that Bellator will be rolled into that? Or are you looking for?
That's possible.
That makes business sense, right? To have a separate revenue stream with another network, if possible, right?
The NBA has 3 media partners.
Sure.
The NFL has 9. We're just little PFL, but we'd certainly like to have 2 or 3 to give fans more access and give the brand more promotion.
All the fighters that are currently under contract with Bellator, do you know the number off the top of your head?
Yeah, 210.
210. Are all of those coming over?
All of them are coming over.
Okay.
Part of what we did, and obviously it would have been better for PFL to only take certain fighters.
Sure.
We thought it was better for the sport and better for those fighters to take them all. So every fighter will at least start with the season. Now, over time, just like the PFL, we'll upgrade the rosters. So we've upgraded 40% year over year at PFL. So those who don't win or don't perform or fans don't respond to likely won't be there over time. But everybody we wanted to take and everybody we wanted to give a shot. This was, a rough time in the industry for Bellator, and we wanted to bring over not only all the fighters, but all the employees. And everybody wants to be part of this new mission. Come on over.
Okay, so I'm happy you said that because, as you may know, a lot of these employees, a lot of them are great, great people who I've had the pleasure of working with for over 10 plus years. Lovely people, hardworking people. And a lot of them have been left in the dark, unfortunately. Didn't know that this was even coming out this morning, What can you say to them? They're probably watching this right now. Do all of them have a job? Do they have to reapply for their jobs? What is the status of their employment?
Yeah, we sent them a note this morning, the same time they were informed that every one of them are welcome to become part of the new company. And
Wow.
we'll talk to them the week after the championship next week. There won't be a Bellator company and there won't be a PFL company. There's one company. So we want them to join our one company in roles that we'll talk to them about. But there are 21 employees of Bellator, just as there are 210 fighters.
Is that it? It's just 21?
21.
Holy smokes.
PFL only has 52 employees.
Wow, okay.
We play pretty big on TV.
Yeah.
Run a pretty tight organization. But everybody will have a role should they want one. The big thing is, do you want one? And do you want to be part of the new mission? What we're doing is different than what other people are doing in the industry. We're more innovative. We think different. We work pretty hard. That's how we got to where we are. But we hope that they all come. And we hope that they're all excited about this mission.
Okay, I would imagine that is music to a lot of their ears. Why, these 8 events that you're talking about, the one-offs, because you are the PFL, right? That's the brand you care most about. Why not just call them the PFL International Series? Why are you keeping the Bellator brand alive?
Yeah, first thing I want to say is, look, as an entrepreneur, I don't know. We don't have all the answers.
Okay.
Right, there's some things that we try that don't work. And then there's some things we try that are home runs, right? So we try to come up with what we think is the best thing for consumers, in this case, fans, all the time. We always start fan first, fighter first. That tends to make the most money. That doesn't mean you're right all the time.
Right.
So we believe that the PFL stands for meritocracy and transparency. The Bellator product is a one-off event product, so it's different. The Bellator also has a following over 12 years. So we think if we keep those two concepts together, that's a pretty big opportunity in the market space. That from the Professional Fighters League is the Bellator brand, and that is 8 great one-off events every year where we match make. Regardless of where the fighters are from Bellator or PFL or we recruit them from UFC. So we thought that was a great opportunity to keep that brand and revitalize that brand and have it stand for one-off events. That's our belief. Also, in the business market, there are media partners that like that brand, and there are commercial partners that can't get an opportunity with PFL or with UFC. So that's what we're going to try. I know a lot of people said 10 months, strike force.
Right.
2 years, this wrestling promotion. This could last 1 year, this could last forever. As entrepreneurs, we don't want to be right. We want to win.
Right.
We think this is a winning idea. But ultimately, the fans tell us what's a winning idea. The difference we have oftentimes with UFC is UFC wants to be right. We want to win. And so when the fans tell us, like PFL champions versus Bellator champions, are 7 Bellator people going to win? Are 5 PFL people going to win? Is it going to be 4-3? I don't know and I don't care.
Right.
That's a fight I want as a fan. That's the fight they want. So, of course, that's what we announced on day one of the announcement. So if we stay, call it fan-centric fighter first, PFL will become a co-leader, be enough money for everybody.
So this idea of PFL champions versus Bellator champions, that would be 7, I think, right? You have 7.
Yes.
That would have to be before the season starts, right? So it'd be the ones who are crowned champions on Friday, correct?
Yes, ideally we'd like to make it in the first quarter because
Okay.
the season starts in April, and we're going to try to launch the reimagined Bellator in March. So we'd love to do that event in February if we could. Now,
Okay.
barring health of all the fighters,
Sure.
because we want that to be the best card possible. But we'd love to do that in February if we could.
Do you have a date yet?
No, we don't.
Location?
We're talking to people, and we have tentative dates and tentative people, but nothing to announce yet. We hope to be able to announce it before Christmas.
So I might be getting in the weeds here, but like two of the best champions on the Bellator roster are champions of weight classes that you don't have
Yes.
in PFL.
It's unfortunate.
Johnny Eblin, Patchy Mix.
It's unfortunate.
What happens there? They're just left out?
Yeah. So it wouldn't be legitimate.
Right,
Right.
right.
So of course they're going to, they could fight on the Champions Series of Bellator. Some of them may even make our pay-per-view cards next year.
Right.
Even higher elevation, the Ngannou card. For example, the fight I want to see the most, I heard all the discussions on one of the matchups. I've been wanting to see this Kayla Harrison, Chris Cyborg fight since a little baby.
Yes. Yes.
So that might be on a pay-per-view next year, the PFL pay-per-view super fights, which remember, the biggest fights we do, 2 a year, are those pay-per-view fights.
Okay.
So think of it as there's one pool of fighters. We have all this creativity now where we have 30% of our roster ranked in the top 25 of the world, same as UFC. That is the available creativity to give to fans. How do we put that roster together in great products? Some will be in the league season. And if we do that, the ranking for the league season next year, if you took an average fight card, would be 40. The UFC average product, non-pay-per-view, is 70. This is Fight Matrix to put it, the quality of what we put together. This year, it would have been 80 in the PFL. Think of how good that would be. So the creativity of what we can put together now for fans is astounding. How will we mix and match that? How will we program that? We'll learn over time, and mostly we'll listen.
So this pay-per-view that you're talking about, this pay-per-view series, that would be in addition to a Bellator PFL card? Like a Bellator PFL card would be a regular card, and there will still be like another higher tier?
Well, remember, next year we're going to do 2 PFL pay-per-view super fights.
Yes.
That's where Jake fights, where Francis fights.
Right. And that's in addition? Because,
We're always going to have those 2.
Okay, but a PFL Bellator super fight card feels pay-per-view worthy, no?
That could be its own pay-per-view next year. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Do you have an update on Francis? Will his next fight be for PFL? Because I know you said it could either be first quarter or last quarter.
The same 2 things I told you last time with transparency. One, we don't know, other than he will fight with PFL in 2024. We don't know if it's first or last quarter. And I still think that it will be a mixed rules fight. And I still think Deontay Wilder is the most likely opponent. That would be unbelievable. I think the second and third options are much less compelling. So we don't want to force those options in order to get it in Q1.
Who are they?
Much less compelling.
Okay, all right.
You asked me this last time.
Yeah, I know.
But we're listening to Francis, and he's sequencing his options. He has a great boxing option and this great crossover option. What works for him in 2024 and what works for the opponents and how to put those together. That's what we're working with him on now.
And so Deontay just being added to this December 23rd card, does that change the possibility? Or
I think it changes the timing, not the possibility.
Okay, interesting. Yes. What about Jake?
So Jake was always Q4.
Okay.
Because for him to get good in his standards for an MMA fight that's legitimate, worthy, he says he needs that year. He started training a month ago in the Smart Cage, down at his home. So I think that is October, December 2024.
The Nate Diaz team was very upset after your comments last time.
Yes, they were.
They were.
Yes.
Would you like to try to fix that relationship, whatever the relationship is?
Well, I think if they watch my entire comments, they'd be less upset, which started with, he's the people's champion. We respect Nate. He accepted that fight. The fans would love that fight, and we would love to have him do that fight. And we're offering him more money than other people because that's respect. Mm-hmm. So I think that if they listened to the whole comments, then they would be much more pleased than they were with the edited comments, yes.
Do you think it could happen?
The one thing about Nate or fighters or entrepreneurs, they're their own men.
Right.
They do what they want to do. Nate will do it when he wants to do it. So I'm just trying to create a canvas that we're open for business. It's like the old Motel 6, we'll leave the light on, right? So I just want to leave the light on, and I want to say, here's $15 million, here's Jake, We have all the infrastructure at PFL, and we're easy to work with. Think the light's on.
Is it 15 now? I thought it was 10.
Said 10 to 15.
Okay, I like that.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
just letting them know the range is there.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
There's a higher end of the range and a lower end of the range.
Seems like a great
But
deal.
beep, the light's on.
Okay.
Right.
I love the idea of Harrison fighting Cyborg. Is Harrison's deal done at the end of the year?
She is, but we have understandings, and I'm pretty confident she'll have a new deal.
Okay, what about Chris? Because I know, like, publicly, you and Chris have kind of, I don't want to say battled, but, difference of opinion. Is she going to come on board?
Yeah, she's under a long-term deal.
Okay, so she has
signed.
to.
Yeah, she's under a long-term deal. And I always separate, public personas from reality. We've had good breakfast together.
You did?
Yes, of course.
Recently?
6 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I'm so supportive of our fighters in PFL. Well, now she's one of our fighters. So I think one of the perceptions was always, you are so in Kayla's corner. Well, now I'm in everybody's corner. Right? Now I'm in everybody's corner, right? So now we've got, 260 fighters, of which I support them. I'm a fighter. I fight to build this company. So I know what it is to fight. I know what it is for people to say, you suck. No, 1,000 times. That won't work. I'm going to kick your ass. I know what that's like. I get that every day.
Right.
So I'm very defending of them and very much additive to giving them an opportunity. So I think a lot of what came from Chris was her sensing that whole support and defending of Kayla when she was not part of PFL. So I think now everything will all be good.
After her last fight, she had a face-off with a young woman named Leah McCord, who has a great backstory. Leah actually texted me this morning saying, can you please ask Donn if I'm still going to get my title shot? I said, I don't know if you'll know the answer to that, but I promised her that I would ask her this.
I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is everybody has more opportunity today. Mm-hmm. There will be 3 times more events in our combined company next year than everybody had this past year. We'll have 32 events in the combined company next year across 5 different franchises. So more opportunities, bigger opportunities. So if you're a fighter, today is absolutely the best day for you.
How will you determine who goes where ultimately?
We'll discuss with them and their managers.
Okay. So there could be a Bellator fighter who's like, hey, you know what? I like this PFL
100%.
tournament idea or season.
100%.
Okay.
I expect half.
What if a PFL fighter says, I like this?
100%.
Okay.
None of us are good at our jobs when we're not happy. None of us. So within reason, I want everybody to be happy. That's my goal. Because that way they perform better and they stay longer. That's why we've never lost a fighter. That's why Francis came here. That's why Jake came here. Listen, respond. Custom deal, right? Happiness. So everybody at Bellator today has spoken so highly of being at Bellator. I want them to speak so highly about being at PFL in the exact same way. We didn't get to where we are by being anything but a great company for employees, for fighters, for business partners. So I would hope that within 3 months, they say the exact same thing. This is just as good, but better. And so part of that will be listening and showing them the different opportunities. We fully expect that half the fighters will move to the PFL league season. They'll see that as a better opportunity for them. And I bet half will stay and call it the PFL International Champions Series. And one of the real reasons we did this PFL International Champions Series was opportunity. It's costing us a lot of money to do that. That is not awesome for us right away. We lose money doing that right away. It was important to create opportunities for fighters and important to build a new product. We've been building PFL 6 years. Well, we get increasingly better economics. Now we're starting over with this new product, so it'll take us a couple years to do better. We think in the long run that's good, but that's investment by us, and that's commitment by us. And I think fighters will increasingly see that just as PFL fighters, when I go to an event, they know what I've been doing since the last event. It's frickin' hard work, right? And so I think they know and respect what we're doing just like what they're doing.
Now that you have all these assets, is there a new parent company name? Is it all like, how Zuffa?
Yeah. Now it's still Professional Fighters League, Inc.
Okay.
Right? And we just have the different fighting brands.
They were in the midst of a $1 million tournament for their lightweight division. Will that conclude?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm always honest about what we know and don't know. I don't know if it's good to finish that up. I don't know if it makes sense to finish that up. It's something we'll look at, and we'll tell everybody by the end of the year.
Okay, so who is the new face of Bellator?
We don't have that yet because we haven't talked with Scott and Mike and the whole team, but we'll know that before Christmas also.
You will make that determination. I know you have talked to Scott. What's your feeling on the likelihood of him coming over?
I don't know. I wouldn't let him speak for
50-50 or?
No, I wouldn't even.
Would you like for him to come over?
I would like for him to come over.
You would like for him to remain the
Yes, of course.
the man at Bellator,
And
the face.
we had a huge meal to serve,
Yeah.
right? We don't have enough people manning the kitchen. Absolutely, man. We are all full out.
When's the last time you spoke to him?
Well, I've texted with him
Sure.
this morning.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And what about Mike Hogan? Because I always would refer to Mike as sort of like the Al Heyman of MMA, if you get the reference. He's behind the scenes. He
Texted with Mike this morning, absolutely.
Okay. So what's his status with the company? Because he's sort of like the heartbeat of the
Same.
company.
I expect Mike to come over, and I hope Mike
You would
will
like
come
that?
over.
Okay.
Absolutely.
There's a spot for all these people.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think the fighters would like to
Yeah.
hear that as well.
Absolutely.
And would you let them kind of run it, or does it have to all like if Mike Hogan or Scott Coker says we need to finish this tournament, this $1 million tournament, are you open to that, or is it ultimately the buck stops with you and the PFL team?
Look, ultimately, what's best for the company, and
Right.
we're all now one company, and all these fighters are one pool of fighters. So some of these fighters are going to move to the season. Some of these fighters are going to move to our new product. So that's what we're all here to decide is what's the best overall for the company going forward. And those are the things we talk about. But at the end of the day, unlike other companies, we're very collaborative. And once again, we only focus on the fans, and then we only focus on the fighters. And we never really, once we do that, get into too many disagreements.
A staple of the PFL product are the uniforms. I have strong feelings on the uniforms.
Yeah. You don't like the uniforms.
I despise the uniforms.
I listen
love
to the
everything
show.
that you're doing.
I listen to the show.
I love everything you're doing.
Yeah.
There's nothing I hate more because
Yeah.
fighters need to be unique. They have
Yep.
to have their personalities. Mike Tyson walked out all black.
Yes.
Chuck Liddell walked out with
Yes.
ice shorts. Tito Ortiz had the fire. PFL doesn't do this. Will Bellator do? They did do this. They let the fighters wear it. Will they now have to wear uniforms?
Yeah, look, let me go further. Remember, when you have different brands and different products, they all have indigenous dimensions to them. They all have their own elements. Bellator will have elbows. Those are one-off. It's a one-off event product. PFL league season doesn't have elbows. Why? That can't work for the health when you have to fight 4 times in 8 months. That can work in a one-off event product where you fight twice a year. This is a league. They're uniforms, just like the NBA. Right? This isn't a league. This is a one-off event product. You can wear what you want. So focus on this as a brand. This brand stands for something very different within our portfolio of PFL Inc. And so I think you'll see the rules follow accordingly. You'll see the uniforms follow accordingly. When you start thinking about it that way, it all makes sense, and the fans will say, I get it. But certain things that we do that people really like, there'll be more technology here. It'll be easier to understand and follow here. The show will be a little bit brighter. We use more lights and more angles. So certain things are overall good. And then each one of these events, we want to have more meaning, which is why they're all going to have 2 co-mains that are for belts. So every 8 events, you'll know what it stands for. 2 titles on the line, every single event, both co-mains. So we're going to try to also bring structure and meaning to that series, much more than why is this happening, each year.
Love it.
So when we say reimagine, we really do mean reimagine. When we say revitalize, we really mean revitalized. But we didn't say start over, right? We're going to take what's good, and we're going to improve where it can be improved.
New logo?
Refreshed logo, probably. Just like people refresh logos all the time.
Okay. Well, one thing that I think the fans were wondering, and maybe you don't know the answer, but I'm hitting you with everything.
Sure.
Because people are going to say,
And so far, I'm answering everything.
You're doing a fantastic job,
Yes.
and this is great. Broadcast team Mauro now is the voice of Bellator. Would you like to see the broadcast team follow?
Yeah, and all this, I haven't
Sure.
talked about any elements of the product. George Greenberg, our executive producer, fantastic. We'll probably have, separate production teams just like we do for PFL Challenger Series, just like we have a separate team for PFL pay-per-view, because all these have different voices. They all have different, remember, there's a PFL look and feel, but they all have distinct voices and distinct elements to them. Bellator will have the same distinct voice. What is that? How do we develop that? That's all the work we have to do in the next 4 months.
How close do you feel like you are now to the UFC? I saw a press conference recently where Dana White was talking about 200 million, 300 million. Clearly, those numbers were wrong. And I think, in fairness to him, he was sort of fed that in the question. But nevertheless, he seemed somewhat dismissive of this asset. What are you buying here? In your opinion, you seem, based on what I'm hearing here, it feels like it's a great deal. You feel very bullish on what you just purchased. How close do you feel like you are now to the UFC?
Everybody knows Dana well enough that he only dismisses things that worry him, or else he just doesn't comment. He didn't comment on the PFL for 4 years because he wasn't worried. He's commented on the PFL a lot the last 6 months. He's worried. What specifically worried him about Bellator is the metrics we put on the press release. 30% of that roster ranked in the top 25 per fight matrix rankings. So this is not Dana gets to rank his own guys. Don's ranking his own guys. As you know, there's only one group that ranks all fighters, Fight Matrix, independently. 30% of the UFC roster is top 25 ranked, and now our combined company of PFL and Bellator, 30%. The same. Now, to UFC's credit, if you look at top 5 in the world, they still own the top 5, 1 through 5. So-called pay-per-view cards, we couldn't compete with them right now, which is why we're only going to have 2, and they have 12.
Right.
But if you say, I'm turning on TV on ESPN Saturday night, or I'm going to tune in Friday night to watch his Bellator International Series or PFL, our cards are going to be better. Better. Because what they put on this year was ranked 70, and what we're going to put on next year is ranked 40. That's why he said, I don't know why in God's green earth anybody's buying this. Because he's smart, and he knows that. UFC ain't the NFL. We're not the XFL. But he wants you to think that. And it's just a matter of time before that starts to get more well-known. And we're not number 2. We're a co-leader. He doesn't want that. That's what's going on.
You have a pay-per-view this Friday. I've seen some blowback from the fans on the price tag. I'm sure you've seen this as well.
Yes.
You're pretty connected online. It's $49.99 on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. The main card prelims are just with the ESPN Plus subscription. Can you explain why you chose that price tag?
Well, first of all, ESPN chooses price tag just as they do for UFC.
You have no say in this?
No.
Okay.
But I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
So I would address it anyway.
Okay.
I'm not hiding behind that. There's 6 title fights plus Kayla Harrison's return. Those are 7 of the biggest fights of the year. I put that card up against the best UFC card this year. So I think the price point's fantastic versus $80 versus $50. I think the thing I understand what fans are saying is PFL's new to pay-per-view. Hey, I used to see this championship for free. Now it's $50. I understand that. You know, certain things over time that were free, you pay. But I think they would say that at $40 or $39.99. It's the price. I didn't used to pay for this championship. So I understand that. But I ask people, check it out, and you will find it a great value. People who bought it last year were blown away. As I said, 6 title fights. It's like 6 Super Bowls back to back to back. Most UFC's ever had is 3, and normally only 2, plus Kayla's return. So I think it's great value. And I think the product itself will speak to those who get it.
I enjoy the PFL Euro product a lot. In fact, we have Dan Hardy coming up
I saw
in
that.
studio right after you. So
I texted Dan.
Yeah, you'll cross paths here in a moment. I do not like the fact that you can't watch it in America.
Yes.
I know I asked you about this last time.
You did.
Any deal that you will make for 2024 and beyond, will we be faced here in America with the same predicament? Or,
I hope not.
Okay.
We launched PFL Europe, and we are launching PFL Mideast. And
When's that?
This is going to launch in April of 2024.
Wow.
And we are going to launch PFL Africa in April of 2025. So you're going to have 2 more complaints unless I settle
Well,
this.
hopefully, yeah.
2 more complaints unless I settle this. And obviously, we're building the Champions League of MMA, where, to your question, your comment with your roundtable earlier, we're trying to create a path, a true global system of MMA, where you fight in Africa, you become the champion, you move to the PFL League.
Okay.
You fight in Europe, you're champion, you move to the PFL League. There's a system in football. You go to Pop Warner, you go to high school, you go to Alabama, you go to the NFL. So there's no system in MMA. That's bad for fighters, obviously, but it's also bad for fans. How do you start to follow people throughout their career? That's what we're building at PFL. So we do want fans, wherever they are, to be able to see those products. And so we're trying to secure a U.S. distribution deal where you can see all the leagues.
Okay.
Not just PFL Europe, but PFL Mideast, PFL Africa, PFL Australia, PFL Latin America. So part of why we held off on doing that deal was so fans didn't have to go in the United States to more than one place. So they could be fans of the Champions League of MMA. And we hope to have that in early of 2024, not just for the current ones, but for future leagues, because that would be super cool.
Right.
That's what we're trying to pull off.
And what about for you? This story that I was talking about, I don't know if you heard me talking about it, but I'm pretty sure it's quite accurate. 2016, you're at your desk, comes through the wire, UFC sold for $4.025 billion. You don't know much about MMA at this point, right?
Correct.
If anything. And you say, holy smokes, where's the competition? If this is $4 billion, like what's going on here? And that's where your journey begins. You end up buying World Series of Fighting. You have some investors. You give birth to PFL, etc. This is a crazy thing. Here we are 7 years later, and you've now purchased Bellator. In fact, I got a text from Jim Bankoff, who's the CEO of Vox Media, who said he used to work with you at AOL. You're an executive. You're not a fight guy per se. Now here you are. You're like playing a game of Risk. Like you're taking up all these territories here. Is this like? Have you had a chance to sit back and be like, this is a crazy 7 years? And did you even expect all of this in less than 10 years to happen to you? And this idea that you came up with when you saw this come through the wire?
Well, two things. One, we're all fighters, right? You're a fighter. Cameraman's a fighter. I'm a fighter. Are you fighting for love, respect, money, to pay off your house, to impress your dad? Right?
Yeah.
We're all fighters. We're all fighting for something. It's just what do you fight for? Well, I fight to build companies. So I spent 30 years, 15 years as an investor and 15 years as an entrepreneur, but all 30 are building disruptive, innovative companies. So I started at America Online, built a company.
Part of the Chicago Cubs, right?
Chicago Cubs. I was
Youngest executive in baseball.
youngest, signed Sammy Sosa to his first deal.
Did you
way
really?
Back when.
Wow.
So at age 29, and then I started the venture capital firm with Steve Case and Ted Leonsis, and we did several companies that people know of: Sweet Green, Kava, Clear, DraftKings, Sport Radar, Scopely, all these companies that are, were PFL. They were all middle school kids that went to college, right? And so to me, what I'm fighting for is to create something innovative that's never been done, to build a business model around it that could become a lasting, big, important, valuable company. That's what I love doing. And so for me, this is just a chapter of that. And I just happen to see in MMA, biggest fan base, which 650 million fans, most underserved, only 40 events from UFC, but nothing else, and the fastest growing sport. What is this? Only 25-year-old sport. So it reminds me when I went to America Online in 1997, it was only worth $4 billion. And I had an email, but nobody else did. The internet was just starting its growth. So I go, it's kind of like MMA. It's super mature to you because you're an insider. You're like an MMA savant. It's like when I went to the internet. But for most people, still a new sport, right? It's still just going from niche to mass and just going to the high growth of its business cycle. So I go, that's fantastic. You're always looking for a big audience that's underserved, that's just starting its monetization, that needs more global competition. So that's what I saw. And so I don't do anything else for 7 years.
No other businesses?
I'll do Boo.
Okay.
Now, after a year, I left my own venture capital firm, of which people thought I was insane. Okay?
Why did you do that?
You can't build anything. It's too hard unless you're all in. So I have a great team, Peter Murray, CEO, and Ray Sefo, George Greenberg, fantastic team. But having built several companies before, there's an art to doing it. And I didn't think it would maximize unless I went all in doing it. But my partner said, hold on, we're quote at the top of the food chain, handing out money. So you're a chooser, and now you're going to be a beggar, of which I've called 1,000 people asking for money, over 5 years.
How hard is that, by the way?
Well, if you really believe in what you're doing, it's only medium hard.
Okay.
But, like in the Wall Street Journal, they say 100 people turn me down. And I go, well, when you get to 1,000, call me. But if you really believe in it, you love the challenge. It's almost like the bodybuilders when you see them lift all that weight and you go, man, I couldn't do that. Or my friend Carlos Silva, who used to work at it, he just ran a huge Ironman. How did he do that yesterday? I couldn't do that. If you love it, the pain is worth it. If you love it, the pain is worth it. So for me, the short answer to answering your question, from a little idea in my head that one Monday to today, the pain is worth it. I go, that's pretty cool. Look at this opportunity we've created for fighters. Look at what we've done for fans. look at the value we're creating, and look at the industry that we're evolving and innovating. That's pretty cool.
What have people, in your opinion, done wrong in the past? The ones who have tried to nip at the UFC's heels but ultimately failed. What have they done wrong that you are doing right, in your opinion?
Well, ultimately other people will be the judge of that, more than us. But I would focus on three things. One, we innovated. We did something different. We took a lot of arrows at the beginning. You guys don't get it. This season won't work. And to me, the answer I always give is I don't like college basketball, but I watch March Madness. Mm-hmm. I know what that is. 16 versus 1, underdogs, stories, journeys, format. And that's what I saw with MMA, is if I could make the sport fans love MMA. I know the MMA fans love MMA already, but if I can make the sport fans love MMA, grow that sport. So it's number one, we really innovated with a different format that brought more structure and more storytelling and more understanding to the casual fan. And number two is the credibility that we brought all in. My team, the network of investors, the network of partners, we approached it like the NBA would approach it. So it wasn't just pure combat. It was a lot of sports, infrastructure, and a lot of seriousness to it. And number three also is timing. A lot of people were maybe a little bit early. MMA was really crossing over to mass market. The Disneyfication of MMA had happened, so maybe more people were open-minded that something else was possible. But overall, it's refusing to give up. It's this tenaciousness of everything, wrapped around that.
Were you worried during the pandemic that this dream might die?
Sure.
How close was it?
It's not just then, many times. Yeah. I don't think there's, if you've read, Phil Knight's book, which is the best, there's at least 4 times that he's weeks away from going out of business.
Wow.
Weeks. And it's Nike.
Yeah.
And he's worth $40 billion. Every single great company, except like maybe Snapchat,
right.
We're like, hey man, I'm a success in one day.
Right.
You almost go out of business several times. And it's almost like King Dakar, the roller coaster, has a rollback, right? You almost have these rollbacks all the time where you go, I can't believe it. We were there. How could this be happening? We were there. So there have been several times that me and my team, we said, okay. But on number 2, you say we made it past number 1. On number 3, you say we didn't die on number 2. So it's like 128 hours, that movie. Our arm is stuck. We're going to get off this mountain. Are we going to have to cut off our arm? How are we going to get off this mountain? And how are we going to get down here and live to fight another day?
What do you need to do as a brand to start selling more tickets? Because, you see that event on Friday, the Bellator event, that was a pretty good house in Chicago. Right. I saw your event in Paris. That was a phenomenal house. Yeah. But sometimes these events, and I understand why you do them, the Atlanta ones, they're not big crowds.
You're totally right.
And that comes across on television.
Yep.
How do you change that?
Look, it's a great question. And from the very beginning, you can't do everything as a company. And we made the audacious bet to be global right away. So fighters in 25 countries and broadcast partners globally. But as soon as you do that, you lose local fighters selling tickets in local areas. You lose the Cedric Doumbé, Paris. You lose what Bellator gets when they go to Ireland. Because we have the league season, there is no undercard. Right? During the league season, there's no undercard, so you have no opportunity to put the Atlanta fighters in Atlanta. And because it's global, we really focus on the TV production, not the ticket sales. That's where all the money is. There's more money at Mola in Indonesia than if I sell out Atlanta.
Interesting.
So the season format plus our real audacious goal to be a global media company had tickets like our 5th priority. Can't do everything as a company. You don't have all those resources. So that was really the answer for the first 3 or 4 years. So we weren't even worried about it. We just wanted enough tickets so that the TV product was acceptable. But what you see, Cedric Doumbé sold out. The 24th, sold out for the championship. So we now need that muscle. We're now grown up enough that we need that muscle. So you'll see us do more of that next year. We have the fighters now that we can move around the product. So certainly Bellator, that you'll see us start to have those kind of $500,000, $700,000, $900,000 gates, I think, in 2024. But that historically has certainly been, I don't want to say by design, because we'd all like to have 5,000 tickets sold, but we accepted it because our strategies were elsewhere.
Where's the love for Canada, my fellow Canadians? No events in Canada yet? Can we get, I mean, Olivier Aubin-Mercier is one of your best fighters.
We've got to do it.
Yes.
We've got to do it. And I think we're going to have a big Canadian deal, by the way.
Really, because the TV deal's up as well with
I think we're going
TSN.
to have a big, we had a lot of interest in Canada.
Okay.
We had 3 bidders in Canada. I know you'll be happy to know.
Yes. Break some news for us. Where are we
No,
going?
but we will
Okay.
break news.
All right,
in
fine,
fact,
fine,
I'm going to let Pete Murray break it with you because he personally did it.
He did it, okay.
He did it. He was so good.
And will this all come at the same time, all these big announcements?
Yes.
So when? Around Christmas?
2 weeks after Thanksgiving.
Okay, so
Early December.
pretty
I'm gonna let
soon.
Pete do it
Okay.
with you. But we should be in Canada.
Yes.
Because we do have, great Canadian fighters, and we should do that.
Is that, like, do you know everywhere that you're going in 2024?
No.
You don't?
No, we
What
don't.
percentage do you know? Like, do you know 50?
Well, we have the TV schedule. We don't have the event schedule yet.
Okay, so
We've got to build that after. The TV schedule just got done a week ago.
Wow, okay. Do you know when your first event of 2024 of any kind will be?
We know the league season starts in April.
Okay.
So we know that exact date, and Pete will come on here and announce all that with you. But we don't know yet. We're looking at early March to start the Bellator International Champions Series, but we don't have that date yet.
Okay. Do you feel like you need a face a la a Dana White, a Don King, a Bob Arum, a promoter type? I really enjoy talking to you, by the way. You bring a lot of excitement.
Yes.
I was talking to another member of your team, and like the Donn Davis emergence as a character in the sport has been fun because I just had Frank Warren on. I love talking to people like that. I love talking to people like you. Are you the new face? Like, are you going to be the promoter? Are you going to be the guy standing at the dais telling us to watch on Friday night? Do you need that guy?
Well, it's an interesting question. We've always viewed the PFL as the NBA. So I view myself more as Adam Silver, where the fighters are the stars. LeBron is the star.
Sure.
So we'll see that if we need that going forward.
Fighting's a little different, right? You need
Fighting
that
could
guy
be
at the dais saying,
Yeah, fighting could be a little different. So whatever we need going forward, we'll always do. Because as I said, we are here to win, and we'll make adjustments where we need to win. But all of us are very, very, very much focused on the product. And whatever the product needs, we'll give it to them.
I said at the beginning, fascinating day from a business standpoint, exciting day because of all the possibilities. But I did say, full disclosure, a bit of a sad day as well. And I say that because of the history, because I don't know what the future is for the likes of Scott Coker and Mike Hogan, et cetera. And also because I'm very pro-fighter, and I like that they have places to negotiate with as opposed to one or two. What would your response be to someone like me who says that there is a sad component to all of this?
One of my mentors, Ted Leonsis, who you probably know really well, I use his phrase all the time, declare victory. Ted's always optimistic. And in fact, his book is called The Business of Happiness. Every situation is positive in the world of Ted Leonsis, and I really believe that. And he uses the word, in any moment, declare victory. That's what I believe has happened today. This is the best outcome if you're a Bellator fighter or you're a Bellator employee or an MMA fan possible. Right? And they will see that in the coming weeks, months, and years. This creates more opportunity, more and better product, and more and better options. And we are glad to have done that at PFL. This was good for us, but all other options were bad.
Meaning like they could have all just been laid off, right? So, I mean, that would be the worst. And I think some of them were fearful of that. I think you've given them a lot of hope after today.
Yes.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on, a detail, a nugget or two that you need to get out? This is a great opportunity, and I appreciate you told me the first time you were going to come in studio would be to announce this. We snuck one in after the Ngannou fight, which was
We
fun.
did sneak one in, but Zoom only.
Zoom only.
Zoom only.
So this has been a great honor.
I just think what's fantastic is, and I've always said the same thing, UFC is a great company and they invented this industry. This is not about taking share or shifting share. MMA is growing. MMA is growing 10% a year. Every other sport, 2 to 3%. They're going to do well. We're going to just do really, really well. And I'm excited to have my new teammates at Bellator. I'm excited to have all our new fighters propelling us forward, and we're going to win. The next time we're on here, when people laugh that we're going to be a co-leader, we're going to be a co-leader. Just like they laughed that we were going to be number 2, and we were number 2. And so to me, if you're on the new Bellator team, if you're on the new combined PFL team, declare victory.
Where are you in 5 years? Where would you like to be?
We're the co-leader in MMA, flat out. But we do things different. We think different. We innovate different. We don't have dogma. We co-promote. We give fighters opportunity. We let them box. We give them 50% pay-per-view share. We think different, and we're the co-leader. They do what they do. Fantastic. We do what we do. Market's big enough for two very, very, very big, valuable companies.
That word co-promote is a very interesting word in MMA. Are you open to the deals that they have with Ryzen or other promotions? Or when you say co-promote, do you just mean PFL Bellator?
No. I mean, we would do John Jones Ngannou.
Right.
We would give them more money. I'd let Dana run the show and talk to the Diaz. You give fans what they want, it all works out.
He was asked about that recently and said it was the dumb question of the night. Did you see that?
I saw that, and I told him, I said, there's only three things in it for you. One, for the fans, give them the fight they want. Two, for the sport, really decide who's number one. And three, make a lot of money for yourself, will be the biggest pay-per-view of the year. There's nothing not in it for you except you don't want to do it.
Are you saying this privately to him, or is that
I put it
tweet?
out on Twitter.
Yeah. Do you have a relationship with him or anyone over there?
No. But yes, we do have very good relationships between our team and their team.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Have you ever met Dana?
No, but tons of respect. And he's heard me say repeatedly, there is no MMA without him. And I think until recently, they have high regard for how serious we run the business.
What do you say until recently?
Well, this Bellator thing, I was thinking, this Francis thing is, it's got him a little ruffled.
Right.
But it'll all be great.
But for the most part, I think he has not taken shots at you guys and been
No, it's because,
respectful.
look, as an entrepreneur, what they've done is nothing short of miraculous. And I would never say anything but positive stuff. And we would never do anything but complimentary, accretive stuff to the sport or the fighters or the fans.
Last thing, and again, thank you for this time. I think you have to go to another interview after this. Why should people watch on Friday? Give us the Donn Davis hard sell. Friday, PFL Championship, the last of this era, right? This is sort of the closing chapter of this era before you start a gigantic 2024. Correct. And you know what would be fun? By the way, can I give you an idea?
Absolutely.
Could we get some of those Bellator guys to show up and be in attendance on Friday?
Good idea.
Sit in the front row.
I'll invite them all.
Little invasion.
I'm going to text right after this.
Wear Bellator shirts and say,
I think it's a good idea.
That would be fun. Oh my God.
I'll credit you.
Yeah. You need to sign Michael Venom Page, too. He's a free agent. I don't know if you're...
No, I thought he signed with UFC.
Oh, is that a done deal?
Well, I
you
saw
just
some
broke
tweet
some more
on it.
news.
I saw some tweet on it.
Anyway, get a couple of guys sitting in the front row. Why should they watch on Friday?
To me, there's four fights that I love, but they're going to be different kind of fights. One, you got to see Kayla come back. I don't need to say any more than that. It's her tune-up fight before Cyborg. You got to see that, right? You got to see that.
Okay, I love it. I love it.
Number two, I don't really do the matchups, so occasionally I can pick favorites. Ray Cooper III has long been my favorite.
Wow.
To see him go against Derek and Ray Cooper.
Yeah, Derek Brunson.
What in the heck is going to happen there?
Yeah.
And it's an undercard fight.
Right.
I love it. Ray's been out for 18 months because he made so much money. He couldn't stop surfing and gaining weight in Hawaii. What's he going to do? And Derek's coming in here thinking, I'm going to beat the crap out of everybody. I don't know. I got to see that fight. Number three, Panado is a real-world Rocky. He's fighting on a $5,000 fight card.
Wow.
He was nobody. Wins the PFL Challenger Series, undefeated, knocks off all these guys, Brendan and all of them. He's Rocky, except real. So he's fighting for $1 million, and he's a $5,000 fighter. So imagine if Kyrie Irving, Game 7 for $1 billion, because that's the same multiplier in Kyrie Irving's. We'd all watch Kyrie try to shoot a free throw for $1 billion. That's that fight that starts the card. And last, OEM, your Canadian boy versus Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay, very interesting guy. Brother died, boxed for 2 years, came back, really had to take Shane Burgos to the distance. And OEM, it couldn't be a more different fighter. No emotion, all tactics. So you have this deep, tactical fighter with his wily mustache who looks like a Canadian IBM copy salesman against Cassius Clay who looks like a 1950s boxer, all emotion. I love it. Those are the four I want to see. I think there's something there for everybody.
Yeah, we love the Canadian gangster here. In fact, I have his fanny pack right over there.
There it is.
Olivier Aubin-Mercier. So what a day. Congratulations. Mazel tov.
Thank you.
You kept your word. You came in. I think we answered everything, right?
And if we didn't, have the fans ask you.
Sure.
We'll answer everybody. And as I said, it's a great day for the sport. We're excited to give fans everything they want and more.
I wish you guys nothing but the best. PFL and Bellator coming together, perhaps the first event in March of 2024. We have some big announcements still to come. TV deal for PFL, TV deal for Bellator, all this stuff. I mean, this is a lot of stuff, giving us a lot to chew on in the holiday season. So I appreciate that.
You. Thanks for having me.
Very much. Thank you so much, Donn Davis. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Hey, if you like this video, give us the old thumbs up. Subscribe as well. You could get many more of these videos on the channel, so please do that. We would love you forever if you did so.